In 2009, Killzone 2 was lauded as one of the most graphically impressive games to have ever graced a video game console. But it was before that, before even the infamous E3 2005 controversy over the mislabelling of pre-rendered target video as gameplay footage, that the Killzone franchise made its debut on the PlayStation 2. Pushing the PlayStation 2 to its limits, online and off, Killzone is often regarded as a first-person shooter designed to challenge Microsoft's Halo series. If that's true, then Sony may well have been surprised by the tone and style of Dutch developer Guerrilla's Killzone. Released in November 2004, hot on the heels of Guerrilla's first game, Shellshock NAM 67, Killzone was part science fiction, part military shooter. Though dubbed a Halo killer, it's the comparison of Killzone with World War II shooters that is more obvious. Weapons and environments are the tip of the iceberg, but the most unavoidably striking similarity is worn on the game's sleeve: the design of the Helghast army. Intentionally invoking imagery of Nazi Germany could have been a misstep. Fortunately, some careful handling of the story showed Guerrilla were more interested in displaying war for what it is than in demonising one side over the other. The conflict that saw the Interplanetary Strategic Alliance forces take the planet Vecta from their Helghan enemies has been dormant for years. But as the player steps into the shoes of Captain Jan Templar, it's in the midst of the Helghast's arrival to exact bloody revenge upon the ISA for the betrayal of decades earlier. It's to this backdrop that the player must lead a ragtag squad of 4 soldiers against the forces that invade their world. A squad-based shooter that employs classes to provide variety through standard linear FPS environments may not have been what fans of the modern Killzones expected, but as such, Jake and Joey decided to take a break from the Gamerdork clan to revisit a simpler time. They say that war changes you, that in battle you will find your true strength of character and be tested to your very limit. The time to find out has arrived. Join the daring heroes of Last Save Loaded as they brave Heaven and Helghast.
Hello, and welcome to the Last Save Loaded podcast, episode 4.1. This is Heaven and Helghast with me, GB Joey.
And me, Jake Del Toro.
And our guest this episode, Jay Krylon70 Taylor. Hi, Jay.
You all right, mate?
How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good.
I know you've answered this before on Gamerdork, I think, Jay, but what is Krylon?
It is a brand of spray paint.
Run that by me again. You've got your name from a can of... How did you manage that?
Just a bit of a graffiti. Well, not so much that I'm a graffiti head, but I've got an interest in graffiti. And one day I was just looking around for a new name for the gamer tag, and I saw a can of Krylon paint, so I thought that'll do.
Very good idea. Anyway, how's things with you, Jay? Jake? Jake, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be fun, huh? Jake, how's things?
Not too bad, mate. Been busy at work all day. Glad to get back. Mm-hmm. Looking forward to recording, to be honest, and ripping into this game.
Okay, why are we here then? Well, we've all played Killzone, the first one on PS2, and as the intro says, we've decided to have a look into it and share experiences with it, and more or less comment on the positives and the negatives of the game. And, well, we didn't do a quick save. It was...
No, we did do a quick save.
We did, but it
didn't
wasn't...
work.
No.
That was when we were having real audio problems, and
yeah,
as Jay'll know, because he tried to edit it, it sounded shocking.
Yeah. And then someone went off to Mallorca and we couldn't re-record, could we?
No.
Well, of course not. But we're back again now, so hopefully all that's in the past. Okay. Shall we get into the game and see what what experiences each of us have had with it, and what we think of the game in general, really. I know that Jay, you're a bit of a Krylon. I was going to Killzone guru with 2 and 3. Let me start by asking you what did you make of Killzone when you first got it? I mean, not this playthrough, but what made you buy this game? What attracted you to it?
You mean back in 2004?
Yeah. Because I mean, we had Halo on the shelves as well, but
yeah, well, that's the thing, because this game, when it originally came out, I mean, in the lead up to the game's release, there was a lot of talk about this being the PlayStation's Halo killer. And I mean, in all honesty, they couldn't have been further from the truth, because Halo came out, I think, 2 weeks prior to this game hitting the shelves, and that was Halo 2. So you had this sort of a pretty reasonable campaign. Nothing, maybe maybe in the Halo games it's the weakest of all the lot of them, but it had one hell of a multiplayer. It was one of those defining multiplayer experiences on the original Xbox for sure. But then Killzone came along and seriously underwhelmed.
Really?
It's a really strange game, because although as the game goes on, you kind of get used to it, and there are a few moments that are okay, but overall it's a pretty hollow experience, I found.
Because story-wise, does it fill any gaps story-wise?
No, well, it doesn't. It doesn't fill any gaps at all, does it? Because it's the starting point, really, for a lot of the Killzone stuff. But it's a really weird. In a way, I often refer to the Killzone games as all 4 of the Killzone games as a whole. Because I find that when you've got an overlapping story like this, I always find myself sort of addressing the bigger picture, if you will, rather than what is represented in the first game. And the problem with all the Killzone games is there's a better fiction behind the stories within the games themselves. There's a better overlaying fiction in the actual history that they've created, which is only available, although it might be referred to in the books, I'm not sure. But there's a timeline on the website for Killzone 2. There was a historical timeline, which lays the whole groundwork for the whole sort of everything that happens from a couple of hundred years earlier to the point of where you first lead into Killzone 1. And it's fascinating. It's a really interesting sort of storyline. You actually kind of sympathise with Helgen and the Helghast. But yet the game itself, none of the games for that matter, ever really... They seem out of context for some reason, because they don't quite ever live up to their expectations, and they don't ever sort of develop what the big picture, a sense of history and right and wrong reasons for going for war and stuff like the timeline would indicate.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons that I thought this was worth playing. This is one of the reasons we put it on the list. Probably Jake will probably agree with me that we thought, well, let's go back and see how it's different to what we're used to now on, the current gen, and let's see if this does fill and tell us where these attacks have come from.
But from your perspective, did it?
Well, no, really. You do tend to imagine some of it, that that there is this attack going on, and that the repercussions of this are in 2 and well, possibly 3 as well. But I didn't think I ever got the impression that there was a real big, huge, massive reason, and this is why, from the story in the game. I don't think it was that.
This is what bugs me, actually, because at the time when this game first came out, I mean, we didn't get this timeline until Killzone 2 was released, and they'd set up the website with all its functionality and so on. But the problem is that if you just try to imagine, I mean, at the time this was the case. In 2004, when you first started playing this, you have the Helghast, who are the aggressors. They are, it's just, people say like Nazis in space, but it's you've got that whole thing going on, and there's very little rhyme, or I guess right at the very beginning of the game, you have Visari's speech where he says, they were left on this planet to die, and they, the poisonous atmosphere sort of killed many of them, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't really ever flesh out the story until you hit the timeline, and then you see what really went on. And you realise that it's set in a future where there's no such, there aren't governments anymore, they're corporations. And so it's all this sort of, corporations fighting each other, and you've got the Helghast or the Helgen Corporation, and what was, which I can't remember, which are basically the ISA.
Yeah.
And it's quite fascinating in the sense that, the Helgens were persecuted. They first they were persecuted. They were persecuted. Then they built themselves up again. Then they were persecuted again, and then they turned aggressive. They decided they'd had enough, and they were fighting back. So Killzone starts really with their first sort of attack on Vector, attack at the ISA, which obviously that then will lead them back to Earth if necessary. But it doesn't ever give you this stuff, and so you're sitting there thinking, okay, this is just they're the bad guys, we're the good guys. But the game itself, I mean, it's hard to remember how I felt about it, because I never felt that negative about it at the time. I do remember thinking it was inferior to Halo, because it is on many, many levels. At the time, you were more forgiving, and I think also as time has gone on, I mean, it's like 6 years ago that our expectations have risen considerably of what we would expect from a game like that. Anyway, so it's underwhelming on two levels. To go back and play it again, it's a really hard experience, because it looks crap, it plays crap. And I agree with that. I'm just saying that we'll expand on that in a minute. Let me introduce you to my co-host, Jake Del Toro. Jake, are you there? You're falling asleep.
No, I'm still here. I'm nodding away, agreeing with everything that's being said. What I was going to say regarding the story is would pretty much echo what you two have just been talking about, that if you look at the whole overarching story, when you look at the timeline, it does look like there's a really interesting story there within the universe, but you never get to see any of that, and that's quite frustrating.
But that's also something that's gone through all the games so far as well. They've often they've got this great premise, but they never really utilise it in any of the games.
No, it's like the Star Wars prequels. There's a great premise there, but it's just been done really badly.
Yeah. It's not been exploited in the right way, and the characters haven't really been pushed to their limits, so that you have, because I felt a bit not cheated. I don't say that that's the right word that I'd use to describe, but I felt like there was something missing. When I finished Killzone 1, I thought this just I don't know, and no, I wasn't full, and I wasn't thought that was a great experience. I was completely.
I didn't really get any great satisfaction when I'd completed it, because I never really felt like I was part of anything, because I don't think the story's portrayed very well as you're going through, as has been said, and
it's very empty.
I do agree with you, but unfortunately, I think, and this does not bode well for the rest of the series, but I do find that Killzone 1 has the best story out of all three of them, and what it is there's a very specific reason I like it, and that is that you become aware, and this is the only game that ever addresses this. I mean, I talk about how, you look at the Helghast as they're the bad guys, but during Killzone 1, you encounter the character of Hacker, and Hacker, maybe I'm leading a bit further ahead with this, but it's Hacker's, one of the characters who's in the game is a Helgen 5th columnist. And it's a case that's something that they have never, the fact that he is there means that not everybody on Helgen agrees with Vasari. And yet that's something that they've dumped since that point, and it was an interesting idea. I mean, arguably, it had already been done with Halo 2, because in Halo 2 you've got the Arbiter, which is pretty much the same kind of thing, you see from his, although in many ways, it's superior because you see it from his perspective. You play as him, and you see how he understands that he's been lied to, and how he comes about the change. But with this, it kind of just, as you meet him as he's already a spy. He's been uncovered as a spy, and you have to go and rescue him, and that's how you first encounter the character. But it's such an interesting idea that not everybody was for Vasari within his own government, and it could have been the seed of something really, really interesting, especially when you see what happened in 3. You kind of think, oh man, it could have lifted it up, into something more interesting that they actually delivered.
Do you think that maybe perhaps that if we ever see, maybe on this gen or the next gen, that if a Killzone 4 ever exists and if it's ever developed, do you think they'll pick up on these loose strands at all again?
You never know. I mean, you never know. I mean, there's so many of these, and all too often, these characters just get passed over and forgotten about. And, if you look back through the whole series, from even including the game Liberation, there was characters coming into this that you think they could have shown some kind of repercussion from their actions, but they didn't. I mean, for example, like Killzone 2, in Killzone, you start off playing a character called Templar, who is, as anybody who's played Killzone 2 will remember, who has become the, I can't remember if he's a colonel or, he's a colonel in this game, isn't he? But he's he obviously get promoted to the point of he's a commander-in-chief or whatever in Killzone 2. And he ends up getting killed by Radek and crashes the ship, taking out the Petricite grid.
Yeah.
But he had a relationship with another character in Killzone called Luger.
Yeah.
Who, is one of, again, and this is another reason why I feel that Killzone 1 stands out better than all the other games, is they had a female playable character. It was like the women in the later Killzone games are pretty much passed over. They're kind of almost, I don't know, a flash in the pan cameo appearances, but Luger's like a fully fleshed out soldier. And there was this whole relationship there, which would have really added to the fact that if she had made a reappearance in 3, because, Templar is murdered in 2, you kind of hope that maybe she'd come back for 3 and make an appearance somehow, but she didn't. And it's this kind of thing, you never know with Guerrilla what they're gonna do with these. They seem to have these good ideas, but then never work on them, never bring them up to their full potential.
Do you think, Jake, that they've missed a trick with this?
Well, yeah, as like we're saying, there is the base for a really interesting story there, but it's so underused. It's a shame, really. It's strange because there's the potential there for so many really, really good and interesting stories, but it's like they're trying to focus on, or maybe they have focused on something else and left the story to the wayside slightly. But I can't see what they've put more focus on, because there's nothing really that stands out in the game, if you know what I mean.
Well, I'm hoping to be, as I said before, with Killzone 4, if it's ever made and put onto whatever generation we see in the future, then that these little touches that they've made in these games, in Killzone with Luger, as Jay was just saying, and with all the other characters that are in there, I hope that there is some sort of surprise, some sort of element at the end of it that'll give it a bit of a climax and make it a series that, whether it's 4, 5, 6, however long it goes on, that there's something there for those, let's say, in inverted commas, hardcore Killzone players to enjoy and to really make the series memorable and epic.
I won't bet on it.
No. This is what I fear. I think they're more probably concentrated on the game.
I actually think after the debacle that was the end of Killzone 3, I honestly think they should if they make another Killzone, don't worry about the campaign. Just make it multiplayer. Just have it a multiplayer only game, because your campaigns are getting gradually worse and worse. 3 was like, and I know this is supposed to be about Killzone 1, but 3 it's kind of, it doesn't let up the campaign. It's like a Call of Duty, it's just pretty relentless from start to finish. But you're sitting there scratching your head at the end of it, thinking, "What the fuck?" It's like.
Just want to go back a moment to what we were saying before about Templar, Luger, Hacker, etc. There's some really memorable characters there, as we were just saying a minute ago, and I unfortunately played through the whole game as Templar. I thought that he was the best player that I could. I tried with Luger, but she was like, her health bar was very low very quickly. It was difficult on.
But you didn't try Rico, did you?
I didn't know. No, I just played through as Templar because I thought that maybe if he was weapon wise, and also he's just seemed a sturdier character for me, and I just thought I may as well give it a try and play only as him. But I would have liked to have tried the other classes. Did any of you try any of the others, and how do they differ to Templar?
Do you know, as soon as Luger, as soon as she became available, I started playing with her because I liked the fact that she had the night vision goggles.
You? Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Well, you can't see her, so it's nothing.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that she had night vision goggles, and I also liked her gun as well, her rifle.
But I found that the thing with it's heat vision, by the way, isn't it?
Heat vision, sorry, yeah.
The heat vision thing, I had the only issue I had with that is when you start using it, as soon as you see them, they can often see you as well. So it almost seemed like, what's the point of trying to sneak up on them? Because as soon as I get anywhere close to them, they just start shouting at me and shooting at me anyway. So it's like, screw this.
Yeah.
You know. But that, in a way, that's another thing that made one sort of stand out to me was the fact that you had 4 characters. You had like a squad of 4 with you at all times, and the game allowed you to play as any one of them, whichever one you chose. So you had like Luger, who was the stealth assassin type, Templar, who was like the all-round general sort of all-purpose soldier, Hacker, who was more like your tech specialist, and Rico, who is like your heavy weapons guy, who I actually find to be the easiest character to play the game with because he's got one awesome gun.
Yeah, the big machine gun.
Yeah, because it's and another thing is that each weapon has a set, which is something that they've lost in subsequent Killzone games, is a secondary fire on the weapons.
Yeah,
and I found that his secondary fire, which was a rocket, well, it's a missile launcher, which can take out the tank. So I found he was quite useful for all that stuff. I just, yeah.
I never took to Rico. I just thought, his character is not one that...
Oh, I didn't like his character. I hate the guy. I wish he'd just either go mute or,
Same here. And that's one of the reasons I didn't choose him. I thought, I better stick. But I wish I'd known about his rocket launcher, because it would have been a useful tool in some of the levels that I encountered, and trying to shoot them with Templar's gun was a bit difficult. And you're sending grenades as well. I was sending grenades around, and they all just scarper. It doesn't even give you a chance to land. You try to surprise somebody with a grenade from a distance, and it's just the minute it goes up in the air.
No. Well, but that's a Killzone thing, isn't it? You cook the grenade before you throw it, so they don't have time to move.
Right. Yeah. It seemed. Yeah, you see, and this is again going forward with Killzone 2, Killzone 3. Sometimes it's just good to just surprise somebody in a tunnel, without having cooked it, because you give them that time to approach the explosive. You give them that time to that distance, and so while it's on the ground, as it does, it cooks, and then just many times I've got kills purely just throwing a grenade straight out and just waiting for them to come to me.
Is that a multiplayer or single player though?
That's more of a multiplayer thing, because I found with single player they just run from it straight away.
Maybe I think it was just that thing where it annoyed me, because I threw it up in the air and then just suddenly just thought, oh god, these are, and as you say, Scarpa, and that was it, they were all gone. And you thought, well, what's the point of that? I think I needed to get the timing right, and as you know, my aiming is famously shit.
You've got the little bars on the side of the grenade, haven't you? Sort of, I think it starts off red, doesn't it, and gradually gets to orange, or is it the other way around?
No, with this one, it just starts out. It's just a bunch of yellow bars that fill up. You see it counting down, and obviously when it gets full, it explodes. So you just got to sort of leave it for 1 or 2 bars left, and then throw it,
and then chuck it.
Yeah. So it's but that's something they've kept in all the Killzone games for cooking grenades and stuff, which is it's
a nice touch. It's a very nice touch. Yeah. How does Hacker compare to the others, Jay? What were you saying? He was more tech.
To be honest with you, because I never used him. He's the weakest. He's the one that I found the least useful. I mean, he has the same weapons. He can pick up he uses all the same weapons as everybody else. Although I think he can hold more. If you're using a Helghast weapon, it holds more ammunition than any of the other characters. But it's kind of like, I don't need him. I mean, once I'd got Rico to choose, I tend to just wait and use him, because I did like his weapon. His standard weapon is pretty lethal, and you can take down a ton of Helghast soldiers with it without reloading, which is more than useful.
Yeah, that's good. There's also this mention. Sorry, Jake, go on.
I was just going to say, I only used Hacker in the very last mission. I chose him by mistake. I just clicked on the wrong person, basically, and he, I didn't really like him, to be honest. He was, I found myself missing Luger. She turned into my favourite.
With Luger, there was this thing going on as well with Rico in a little bit of the story, touching on Hacker and Rico as well. This, that scene where he kills the leader, and he says that he's now a member of the group, and he's confirmed his allegiance to the group, and he says that Rico still doesn't accept him, and I was quite offended by that. I thought, what else do you need this guy to prove to you, to say that he's just killed the general, he's just killed one of the leaders?
Doesn't that come into the very end of the game where Rico saves his life right at the end in the shuttle?
Ah, right, yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So,
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
You ain't seen it, have you?
I have seen it. Yes. No, it's true. I'd forgotten about that.
Well,
yes.
there is a slight difference because each ending, each ending has all the endings are slightly different, aren't they? So as you get to the end, different parts of the story. So I guess the idea being that you'll play with all characters. Unfortunately, they didn't make the game that good that you want to go through it again with different characters there.
So as you play as different characters, you get different endings, do you?
There's reasons to play as different characters, because as like Luger, she can get into the air vents and take different routes in the maps. For example, Rico can't climb ladders, whereas I think all three of the others can. So they can go up on the walkways and take, shoot down above them. And Luger, who is the covert ops person anyway, can sneak into air vents and find alternative routes through. I mean, it's not very well implemented in the game itself, because I often found, I don't care, I'm Rico, I'll just literally walk in a straight line and kill everything that moves in front of me, it didn't matter. I thought, screw all that stealth stuff, I don't need it. But it could have been more interesting. I think it's that the idea is there, but its implementation within the game was shoddy as hell. But
yeah, it's a common theme, isn't it?
Yeah,
great potential, but badly implemented.
The difference between, as we discussed the other day when we were just chatting about it, was the difference between Killzone 1 and Killzone 2 is phenomenal. I mean, you cannot believe that this is the same company making these games. Now, I understand that things change for him, because in between Killzone 1 and 2, they were bought by Sony. They may have had sort of an influx of new ideas and new people. But Killzone 2, is still, for me, to this day, is still a real benchmark title on the PlayStation. I think it's a stunning game in many, many ways. I know it had its fair amount of detractors, but, they're wrong.
It was difficult to get into. I mean, I'd never played the Killzone, the first one, and my first try at this was with Killzone 2, and I found the game really, really difficult to get into at first. I'm sure many people have said this, and I just couldn't. That the guns were different. It was just not what I was used to. And then suddenly one day on the show, I thought, I'm going to give it another go. And once you get over that initial stage, the beginning where you encounter this fierce battle, and you just feel overwhelmed by everything going on around you, and you keep getting killed, and there's just going. Once you've got through what's essentially a bit of a tutorial again, you feel that you've suddenly got to grips with what's going on around you, who they are, what everybody is, and what everybody's there for, and how the how the elements of the game come together. And so I think it's just that introduction, and I thought this was going to be more true of Killzone, this one, than 2, but obviously not. I mean, as you say, Guerrilla have improved lots of aspects of it and made it much, much better, and it still remains a great game.
But I mean, you go from I mean, the one thing that's sort of, it's a strange thing, because whilst they've enhanced, in leaps and bounds, visuals, audio, and all that, with maybe the exception of Rico's voice actor, who I find shit from start to finish, even though it's a different actor between 1 and 2 and 3. But they still lack the talent in the storytelling department, unfortunately. But even I don't know. It's just you live in hope,
but not much hope.
There were things that I was missing, certainly, when I was playing the first one. There were things like a map. As you say, in 2 and 3, the lighting is fantastic. You get clear indication of the ways that you have to, the paths that you have to follow. You can see the difference. But there were certain areas in Killzone that I found, especially in the swamp and part of that right at the end with the snow before you get onto the ship. Those areas were just so difficult to to try and negotiate areas because you had the same flat. Well, I mean, I know it's the capabilities of the machine as well. They're not going to get the same graphics, but it just didn't feel that it was sufficiently clear. And I missed a map, to orientate me. Not a big yellow arrow, as we said, but some sort of indication.
Yeah, that's down to. I mean, like I said, there are other ways they can make the player aware of where they're supposed to be going. And lighting, obviously nowadays, lighting is something that people use. Whether it's Valve with their games and with the Killzone 2 and 3, they use lighting. Whether it's just something to pull your eyes in that direction. And it stands out just enough. And maybe there was a technical limitation with the PlayStation to be able to do that sufficiently. But I agree with you. There's some terrible signposting in this game, and you cannot. I had it myself. There's when you're entering the missile base, Lente missile base, I found myself literally there for 15 minutes trying to figure out how or what I'd done wrong because nothing was happening. I killed everybody. We were all standing around in the centre of this base, and I couldn't figure out what to do. It's like I kept going into the main. You've got these two great big hangar doors, and it leads down a bit of a darkened ramp. I went right down there thinking it would just trigger the cutscene, because you had this weird loading. The game would just freeze as it then loads up the next section, wouldn't it? And then you go into a loading screen. So that's how you knew you got past it. But it wouldn't happen. And it turned out there was a little door to the left of those doors that I was meant to go in, and it was just ridiculous. For ages, I'm walking around trying every different thing, thinking, what's gone on? What has the game crashed on me or something? And obviously, I couldn't remember this kind of precise detail from 6 years ago, but it was like several times you're just thinking, like, is that it? Right? What's? And you're just thinking, why is it? Where am I supposed to go?
Yeah, I had a similar thing. Yeah, it's on the level where you're following a river to try and get to an ISA base.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't figure out where to go. I came to a point where there was a sort of bridge with a chain link fence or some sort of chain net across it. And
isn't that the one you got to climb up the stairs to the middle and there's a button?
You have to go up the ladder, don't you?
Yep, and press a button. And I climbed up the ladders 2 or 3 times. I just completely missed this button.
Yeah.
So some sort of signposting would have been great.
Well, this is it. But even that signposting can come from the other players shouting, somebody activate the bridge. So at least then you're aware that, all right, I'm looking for a switch. But, or one of the players says, oh, there must be a switch somewhere around here. But there's none of that. So you're literally all standing around going, they should have added somebody whistling because it's just, you're sitting there thinking, like, what the what are we doing?
I mean, you don't expect to see a big, massive sign, saying push this button, Jake, Joey, or Jay.
No, but
you're playing push.
There are ways now, and maybe this is indicative of where we are as gamers now and what we expect and what they have the ability and knowledge to do. And maybe back then they were still kind of feeling their way around it. I mean, 2004 isn't that long ago. There are plenty of great examples. I mean, Half-Life 2 was what year was that? Yeah, 2000. Well, Xbox 2005, PC version 2004. Like literally, it came out the week between Halo 2 and Killzone.
Cool.
So really, we should bring that into it and to say, both those games are shit compared to this. I don't know.
Do you know one thing that I would have found helpful is if perhaps your squad mates would have stayed where you were supposed to be going because they just followed wherever you went, I found. And if I'm lost, then I'm thinking I'm going the right way because they're following me, because you see that in a few games.
Yeah, you do get the little Mary had a little sheep effect, and that's really frustrating because all you get is keep down, the same audio, and it's just, following you around saying the same bloody thing all the time. It's just, you think, tell me what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I don't want, as I say, a big yellow arrow, but give me an indication. Okay, I need to work it out, and I probably have to use, a bit of thought, and it's a game after all, but give me some help, some pointers, some idea, as Jay was just saying, maybe the speech and the audio of the other characters could have been exploited and much, much better than it actually was, instead of just the same loop with the same sentences again and then.
That's the thing with this game is the audio. There's 2 elements to this audio thing. One is the sheer repetition of sort of peripheral voices you hear, mainly from the Helghast. They say the same sort of 3 lines through the whole game. But then there's also, like, as you say, with your squad mates, and it was annoying as I was playing as Rico and walking around. Obviously, he seems a lot bigger in Killzone 1 than he is in the consequent Killzones. But walking around with this great big cannon of a gun, and there's Templars shouting behind me, "Oh, stay out of sight, stay low, stay out of sight, stay low." And I'm thinking, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm going to blast them. It doesn't matter, you know. I don't care who's there. You know, it's just could be a bunch of herd of elephants. They're all going to go down in a blaze of gunfire. What does it matter? But it's just like constantly coming out of his mouth, and it was just ridiculous. You think, oh, for crying out loud.
Talking about repetition, some of the stages is going back a step. You were saying, Jay, about this ramp that triggered a cutscene. I got completely lost in one of the areas with was it a shopping mall, or it was some sort of there was some escalators.
The shopping mall.
I mean, I didn't know if I was coming or going up or coming down, and I just couldn't. I couldn't find my way, and I found that also there were areas leading up to that as well, and some of the docks, for example, that were just the same level again and again.
Yeah,
the stairs were in a different place. You went through one part of the dock, the whole scenery. What was out in front of you, apart from a tunnel which you had to negotiate and go through. The stairs were in another location, but the offices and the blocks and everything else were exactly the same. Yeah. And I think it put me off seeing the same thing again and again and again, because I felt that.
But I'm kind of almost disagreeing with this, because particularly with the shopping mall and the docks, all you have to do with those levels is go forward. It's constant forward momentum on there. You never have to backtrack. You never have to go around and look for switches. It's literally just straight through, kill everything that's where it's got glowing red eyes. It's just, and I find myself not really getting stuck on those bits. I mean, in general, and this is what I mean about there's a strange developer at times, Guerrilla, because one of the criticisms of Killzone 2 that came out after was that it was very dull. Like, it was always the same industrial sort of civilian build. It was that whole industrialized township thing going on, and it was that people were saying that the levels all kind of felt the same. They all whilst they might not have looked the same, there was that sort of just everything was dark and grey and miserable. And yet Killzone 1 has this, similar to the way that Killzone 3 had, was an amazing sort of variation in the areas you were going through, from being like a park with cherry blossoms to a shopping mall, docks, snow-capped mountains, jungle, swamp. There's and then eventually at the end a space station, and it was like it, which may sound very reminiscent to anybody who's played Killzone 3. So they're not, it's kind of a weird setup, but I actually found that the architecture and stuff was really good. It had that feel. It's something that they've managed to maintain through the whole series.
Yeah, it sort of feels congruent throughout the whole series, as if it's all part of the same universe.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Did you find that PS2 was struggling with some of these, talking about sceneries and things like this? Did you find that it was chugging away and it was being pushed to its limits in parts, or not?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. There was quite a few moments when you get a lot of soldiers going on as well, and a lot of explosions or whatever. There was some noticeable slowdown. But then there's a lot of popping as well. You get a lot of sort of, everything, sort of trees just sort of materialising in front of you kind of thing as well. Although
a few glitches as well. Soldiers, partially split by walls and escalators. And things like
the
this.
clipping stuff. Yeah, it's like they sort of just. But that's something we see even in games today. You see it occasionally. Well, you see it in Battlefield. You see it in Call of Duties. You see it in all kinds of games. It's a game of its time, I guess. But
would this improve? Now we're seeing other. We were talking about this the other day briefly. Do you think that the game like this, now they're making Shadow of the Colossus and they're making Ico and all these HD remakes? Do you think a game like this would improve if it was a HD remake? Would it contribute anything positive and make it a game that really would stand out as a HD remake? What do you think, Jake?
Well, obviously it'd be better to look at, but I think one of the main problems I found with the game was the lack of sort of variation in the different missions you do. Mm-hmm. You seem to be heading for one place, shooting everyone along the way, and once you get there, you go to the next level, which, again, you're told to head for a certain place, you shoot everyone along the way, and then you finish that one. I think if they did do a HD remake, it'd be good if they could sort of add a little bit more variety in what you're actually doing. Because I found that for about perhaps 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes, I really enjoyed it, but then it's sort of, because you're doing the same thing over and over, it just gets a little bit repetitive and boring.
Yeah, it's weird though with the mission structure, because but you get these secondary mission objectives come up as you're playing, don't you? Yeah. And the thing is that most of them you do as you're going, because it doesn't require any sort of going off to the side to do something specific. It just happens to be along your way.
Yeah.
So it always seemed like pointless, really, to make it why don't you just ignore that element, because you're going to do them anyway. It didn't seem like they were really trying to create something new in terms of like the mission structure and stuff. It seemed very by the numbers.
How do the graphics? How would they? I mean, they look. Some of them, as we were just saying, we're used to the current gen, and really, really good, clear, crisp lighting, areas that are just, clearly identified. Some fantastic, cutscenes. The cutscenes in the game.
Shite.
What did you? It would have been nice. I mean, considering what we're used to nowadays, I would have loved to have seen something nearer, in gameplay to the cutscenes. But I know obviously that's not possible. It wasn't then. But maybe it's because I've been spoilt too much by playing, the Killzone 2 and Killzone 3.
We're being spoiled. It's just that technology has advanced, and now game engines are far surpassed what they were 6 years ago. It's just now everything has to be done it's preferable if it's done in game, but I mean the CG sort of cutscenes in Killzone are pretty, I've seen student stuff that's better than that these days. It's like it's just ridiculous. But it is of its time. If they did a HD remake of this, I wouldn't wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. You know what I mean? It's just it's a game that you could by dressing it up and all that isn't going to make a blind bit of difference to its flaws. You'd have to redo all the voice acting. Well, most of it.
Rico, at least.
Oh, Rico's voice it's there's only one, and it's going to sound terrible, but there's only one sort of, if you will, black voice that is worse than his in this game, and that is the guy in Heavy Rain. And for anybody who's played Heavy Rain, he is the most he's just fucking stereotypical, like garbage. It's just
is he the big mechanic guy? Is it?
Yeah, Mad Dog or whatever he was called. It was just. But it's just like, as soon as the guy opens his mouth, you're like, oh my God, what the hell? And it's almost, and I say almost as bad as that when Rico opens his mouth for the first time. They obviously saw fit to change the voice actor that played him from 1 to 2, but...
Jake, anything to add?
No.
You're well talkative today. You notice you've been on holiday. You're all relaxed and all,
Yeah, but I'm gas bagging a lot, aren't I? So.
You two are saying it all for me.
But the thing is, sorry, I got some more about the voice acting. The weird thing about this, and one of the things that makes it stand out even more, is there's a really strange split between they've hired some really good voice actors, siding them with people who sound like this is their first ever voice acting gig, and when you've got that sort of disparity between the two, it makes it worse. Because on one hand, you've got, obviously, Brian Cox is limited to just the intro cutscene. But every single Killzone game, he has that sort of, he's a great stage actor, so he has that presence, and he's within his voice, he can just command that role completely. But then you've got, like Sean Pertwee, who became a sort of Killzone regular to some degree, because he voiced Hakkar in 1 and Radek in 2, and he's somebody who I feel has done a cracking job with these characters. I actually think his performance as Hakkar and is sort of very sarcastic and quite witty, and he carries that kind of intelligence as well as being quite sharp with his tongue. And Radek was quite malicious psycho kind of.
And he's
soldiers.
his voice fits
characters,
them, yeah.
and then you've got the other Helgen in one, which is General Lente, is voiced by Steven Berkoff, and these are professionally trained stage actors, and the difference in the way they deliver their voice to then sort of the likes of the guy who's voicing Rico and even Luger. Luger's accent switches to Australian at some point in the game. It's all of a sudden you're getting this sort of Australian accent coming out of her, and you think, what the hell is that?
This is one for Jake. He'll like this. Jake, music.
I quite like the music, actually. I think it's not... Have they changed the music since the first one?
No. Well, no, it's the same guy. A guy called Joris the Man.
Mm-hmm. It's not the same tune, though, is it? They have actually changed the...
The music's slightly different, but the intro music is the same.
Yeah, well, that's what I really like. It's the sort of rousing orchestral number. Do you hear it over? You might hear it over the menu, the start menu. But I really like that piece of music, actually.
Yeah, I think it was one of the things that attracted me. To the beginning of Killzone is spectacular. The way it builds up, and see the armies marching and everything going on, and this speech and the music going and everything. It does set a good scene, but then unfortunately the game just, as we just said, it slips. But it's
like
not as epic.
You build it up and then you let them play it, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah. That opening cutscene actually is that's good to watch. I don't mind that as a cutscene, and it sort of it lends itself to make you believe that the game is going to be sort of epic, and it really builds you up and really gets you fired up. I found, or it did to me anyway. And then the game after that is such a letdown. It's quite disappointing.
I mean, I was hearing people before I started playing it, saying, "Oh, it's not really that good. It's not, let's see what you think about it." And then, you play that scene and you come out of it and think, "What is everyone on about? Why is everybody saying, such?" Obviously, it's just the intro, but it is, as you say, a very poignant message when you go in and you see what actually this game is, what you're about to play, and how it's set up. That you think, "Whoa, this I'm ready for this. I'm gonna give it my best," and then unfortunately it falls on the simpler things, which is unfortunate. Thoughts on the game world, I think, is the next bit that we're gonna approach. Comments?
Well, like we've said before, it's quite varied, but you don't really get to see that much because you're just sort of following the corridor that's set out for you, aren't you?
Well, I mean, there's exceptions to that. Like the park, park's a weird level, isn't it? Because it's literally one big open area, and you have to just find your way through it. There's not, again, with the signposting thing, it's quite difficult to know in which direction you're supposed to go. It was the only way I figured it out was when I ran into a load of Helghast, and I thought, well, I must be on the right track then.
Yeah, you can always tell which way to go, can't you? Because they're Helghast. But I found that with the park as well, and because a lot of it looks very similar. You just
Well, I just stuck to the wall. I don't know about you, because it's a great big circular map. I stuck to one wall and just followed the wall around, and so it just made it easy. I think if you start going through the centre is where you run the risk of getting lost and backtracking on yourself a bit.
Yeah, I think that's where I went wrong. I was basically relying on being shot at to find out where to go.
But it's a weird thing, because as I was playing it again, I couldn't help but think, what, I'd love a multiplayer map based on this. You know what I mean? It's like, as I'm playing 3, I mean, we're still regularly on Killzone 3 on the multiplayer, but it's the green parts of the map, the park, the shopping mall. I think these would make great multiplayer maps, and unfortunately, that's a lot of what I was thinking as I was playing it again. I was thinking, what, if they redid this, it could work as a multiplayer. Yeah. But that's kind of meant that I wasn't really giving a fuck about the single player campaign on Killzone 1 at all. But
I was quite disappointed by the other things, the other elements like the drop ships and the choppers and things like this. I thought that there was the tanks as well. I thought there was going to be more of that. I thought you could commandeer a tank or take something and fly. I thought that would be something else that would come later. but it didn't seem to appear. It didn't seem to materialize, and I was a bit disappointed because I thought, it would have been, as we said, a great opportunity for a level, to go over. It just made gameplay different. It varied it a bit, and I thought that would have been a great opportunity, which they've evidently missed, to spruce things up a little bit, or even to just stop the player from having this repetitive level issue.
Yeah. I mean, there's the only, although it's not a vehicle, you get given that airstrike helmet thing that uses the orbital cannon or whatever, and you can then use that to sort of
target
blow up
the tanks.
Stuff. I found that quite an interesting sort of split. I mean, it's like you're saying that there was very little variation, but to me, that's the one point that really stood out as, oh, this is new, within what we'd been playing up to that point. But you're right about it's interesting when you say about the vehicles, because the only time you see them in a vehicle is always during the cutscene, and that's it, and you never actually get to sort of pilot or drive them. Although I'm not, that doesn't necessarily make it a bad game. It's just it was more to do with the variation, wasn't it? We wanted something else to spice it up a bit, rather than, like Jake was saying, it was very repetitive. You just go from A to B and kill every Helghast in between.
Yeah, I would have made something a little bit more. I mean, most games we've seen this before, where you have a level. You're sitting in a jeep, you're sitting on a speedboat with a machine gun turret mounted on the back or the front, and as the conversation's going, we've seen it in countless games. You're just sitting at the back firing at the enemies as they're trying to, board your boat or trying to run you off the road. And I just feel that this would have change the direction of the game, because it would have given an opportunity for the player to do something different, but also sped up the pace of the game a little bit more as well, rather than just running through these countless scenes or areas that look similar to the last one you've just played, and given it no element of, I don't know, surprise.
Yeah, but I think there's probably technical reasons behind the reason they didn't.
Maybe.
I mean, it chugs enough when you're on foot. You put that in a vehicle, and it would just be like pop-up heaven, wouldn't it? It'd just be like I can't see how it would.
But maybe I don't know. They could have taken, maybe had a set thing where you just control the gun, because
but what I'm saying is you've got an incredible amount of pop-up when you're just on foot. If you add speed to that, and you have to be going through a level faster, then that pop-up will become even worse than it is. And it had frame rate issues when there was a lot of stuff going on. You add a vehicle into there, and it would just become a chugging mess. At least that's the impression that I got. Maybe the reason they didn't was just down to technical limitations of the hardware. I mean, at the time, I keep comparing it to Halo 2, but the original Xbox was a damn sight better machine than the PlayStation 2 was. It had far greater graphical capabilities than the PlayStation had. And so when you've got things like, you can do the vehicle stuff, and you can do all kinds of stuff with Halo that the PlayStation just wasn't capable of handling at the time. I mean, there aren't, to my mind, I can't think of any games that you could compare it to, to compare to, say, a Halo game. Not until sort of this gen, where they've got it's got the power to do so.
Yeah. Maybe it is technical limitations, as we say, but
it would have been better. There's no question. It would have made it more interesting. I mean, those sky bikes that the Helghast use. Every time I see them, I think, why haven't they brought them back?
Yeah, I was just so, I felt so gutted, because I think, why can't I in the game use one of these, or why can't they give me one?
Especially when you see them parked up. There's several moments where you walk past them and they're there, and you're like you're pressing all the buttons next to them, thinking, oh, maybe they'll let me on it.
Yeah,
like fuck.
Fat chance.
I was, as you say, I felt that frustration, thinking, why? Maybe it's the next level. Maybe something will happen in a cutscene. Somebody will get attacked, or will get a surprise ambush, and then we just have to go after them on these bikes. But you're going forward, and you're seeing the bikes there, and you're thinking, no, it's not taking me towards them. It's not letting me even go near them. And so this is what I was talking about earlier, the emptiness. I didn't feel that it was that, great, I've had a good time with this game. I've enjoyed myself. I've played it the way I've wanted to play it, what I expected. And these tiny little details of the bikes, as we say, or maybe the drop ships or the choppers, whatever, that maybe were missing from the whole thing as a game. I mean, I think it would have been nice to have something different. Favorite levels or standout missions or things like this that maybe perhaps the credits. Yeah, I was going to say the credits.
Well, actually, no, I wouldn't say the credits because I don't know if you've ever seen the credits of Killzone 2 or 3. They're 10 times better to watch than the end credits of Killzone 1. But I don't know. I mean, Jake, you got a favourite level on this, or?
Yeah, well, going back to variation briefly, I found myself within the sort of limits of the game trying to impose my own variation on the gameplay. And with Luger, I found myself sort of trying to do each mission using stealth, and it didn't really work that well. But what I tried to do was sort of creep ahead of my squad and take everyone out without being noticed. And the level that I found that easiest on was the docks, because you'd have the guards just standing there, and it's quite a bright level, so you could see them. And so for that reason, I think that would be my standout mission.
Right.
Jay?
I have to say the end. I know I've already said the end, but I mean the space station section right at the end. When you're out in the open and in the jungle and stuff, you can feel the limitations. You know, you know where you can go and where you can't go. You know, because there's a log blocking your path there that, you know, these days you'd expect to be able to get over. But there was none of that in the space station because it's basically, you know, you've got all these tight little corridors. So I quite enjoyed that bit, and I felt that was the bit that, you know, it just felt if they'd made more of the game this tight and claustrophobic in the firefights, that maybe it might not have been such a letdown in some of the levels. But yeah, I
suppose that sort of environment lends itself better to this sort of game, doesn't it? When you've got,
especially when you've got, you know, like you say, you're restricted by your hardware.
Yeah. I mean, having said that, in the ship there was some really good. If you look through the window, I stopped as I was running through one of the corridors to find the ladder to go up, because I had this problem where I couldn't find the ladder, and, you know, trying to go up to the next porthole. It was like, you know, circular doors, and I couldn't find the one because you had to push a button again. It wasn't clear where the button was. And I just found myself looking through one of the windows, and you could see outside and the earth and bits of, you know, it looked really quite nice. I thought it was one of the things that caught my eye, as you see.
There's one moment in that last section where you jump on what looks like some kind of moving platform, and you go through basically like glass corridor from one end of the space station to the other,
and you see the ships
into the command center, and it was like you're seeing this. I say you're seeing this space battle going off, but it's pretty basic. But it's the kind of thing that you can see how they've. It feels very similar, that last level, to say the last level on Killzone 3, because strangely enough they both take, well, maybe not strangely enough, maybe they're just running out of ideas, you know, and they're like, oh, let's put it on the space station at the end again. But you can see how they've sort of amped it up a lot more with that one, where there's a hell of a lot going on in 3. And again, it's probably down to technical limitations, but it was just one of those moments that I thought, yeah, this I quite like, because you've got like this pause between two sets of battles, and I don't know, I like that bit of section, but not that I'm planning on playing it again, mind you. But there you go.
I think that section would perhaps benefit from a HD remake if you could actually see the sort of detail of the battle going on in the background, as you're sort of travelling through that glass corridor, helpless to obviously help anything that's going on outside, to sort of see that in sort of glorious HD would be quite good, I think. How about you, Joe? What about your highlights?
I would say the first. Well, it's not really the first mission. I think it's the one that, you know, after the first cutscene. It's the one that I think I was most intrigued by, because I wanted to see where this game was going and what all the negativity was about. And I think I enjoyed playing that level, even though it was very simple, very basic. It was easy. Having played multiplayer on Killzone 2, Killzone 3, I think I was fired up after watching the initial cutscene and having that energy to go on, and I'm going to see how many Helghasts I can get and try and do it as quickly as possible. And used to playing on 2 and 3, I found the controls quite handy, quite easy to get used to.
Saying that's something going back on why I liked 1, mappable controls. Yeah, and that's something they've never done in any of the games, from. And it's something I wish more games would do, that where you can map the control scheme to what you want. And you know, because obviously I tried to just mimic what I was used to with Killzone 3. So
was it automatic though, Jay? Because I mean, we've played on Killzone before. It wasn't. No. Did you not feel that you were?
You start off with the default setting, but you can map all the buttons how you want them. Right. So, you know, it's something I wish all shooters did, because ideally I'd have everyone the same. But, you know.
No, I mean, was it automatic for you? I mean, did you just pick, after playing 2 and 3, did you just pick up the control and know your way around?
No, because I don't remember doing the mappable control thing on when I first played it. Because I think I just left it on default, because I think that's how I approached it. The only thing I ever changed is the invert, but, you know. But with this one, because I didn't like this, as soon as I started playing it again, I didn't like the way it was set up. And so I went back in and changed a few of the... But you don't have to change that many, if I remember rightly. It was just...
No.
I wanted it to feel familiar to playing Killzone, so, you know... But
Yeah, go on. I was going to say the thing also that when they're talking of controls is also the aiming.
But the aiming's garbage. I mean, it's one of the worst. I mean, again, these days, that kind of lack of precision in the weapons would be... I mean, it would kill a game dead in the water without any question whatsoever. I mean, it is so imprecise. I barely ever iron sighted. I mean, you don't really iron sight. All you do is you zoom in on the reticule and that's it. But it was so imprecise that I just ended up firing from the hip through the whole game because I couldn't be bothered. Even the sniper rifle is an absolute dog to control.
It's fucking awful, that, isn't it?
It's horrible.
It's all over the place. It's
not. You don't. It's different to what we're used to, because normally you see the rifle come up and you zoom in. But this is, and you aim the same as you aim normally, but not this time. No. This is all connected to the right stick, and you literally fly in this circle around the screen, like trying to get it to lock, just trying to get something looks like a Helghast in between what looks like your crosshairs, and it's just. Yeah, I ended up just giving up on it and just running at him and shooting. It was just...
Yeah, I never used a sniper. Well, I used a sniper rifle once, and after I'd used it that once, I thought, I'm not using that again.
Is it the level with the building across the windows where you have to try and get across? Luger has to go and open a door or something. That's a level that requires you to use the sniper rifle to everybody in the window, all the Helghast that pop up. And with that horrible orangey red colour as well, doesn't help, because you just really have no depth or no idea of... I mean,
we should try and explain. It could be quite confusing to try and explain what it is, but it is essentially, you're not controlling the crosshairs. When you zoom in on the sniper rifle, all you see is basically this great big orange circle in your screen, and that is what you're controlling. You're not to the way that we're used to it in modern day shooters, where you're aiming like you would aim normally. All of a sudden it becomes mapped to a single thumbstick, and you are literally trying to move this circle around the screen, and it moves so damn fast. It's so easy to overshoot every time, and it's just it's frankly ridiculous.
It's like one stick's controlling the actual scope and the other's controlling the reticule, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're like trying to juggle two different controls at once, just trying to get the sight precise to where you want it.
It depended on how you set it, because I toggled mine, so I went, when I clicked into it, it stayed on it. I didn't have, where you have the choice of zoom, hold, or toggle. Mm-hmm. So I just toggled it, so it locked into that mode once I set it. But yeah, it's just frustrating as hell to even attempt it. It was just like...
I had situations where I was firing and, slightly offset from the head of the Helghast, and it was giving me the shot, and then other times I was just bang on right between the eyes, and it would say I'd missed. It was just it was all over the place. It was just up and down, and it was very difficult to get right spot on, as we're used to, as we just said in 2 and 3.
It's the kind of thing, because when you first get Luger, I decided I'm going to give her a shot again, because I wanted to refresh my memory of what these characters did anyway. Yeah. And I went up. The first moment, I think it's the first time you're in there, you're in this sort of bombed out, what looks like it's a big concrete tunnel. And you have one Helghast who's got his back to you. And I guess the idea is go up to him and stealth kill him. Now, she has a knife, but she has also a silenced machine pistol. So I thought, well, I'm not risking getting that close. So I just went up behind him, put the guns, like literally right to the back of his head, pulled the trigger, fired one shot right into the back of his head. the guy turns around and starts shooting at me, and it's like, right, this is bullshit. Because it's just like, screw this then. It was just like, what's the point of even trying to go stealth with this? But it was the fact that a single headshot did not take him down. It was like, right, that is unacceptable. It's just, dear me. Yeah. But,
I found that the bald Helghast as well were atrociously difficult to kill and shoot.
Well, there's several types, isn't there? There are some types of Helghast who haven't made a reappearance, but you've got the heavies who they're not as recognisable in 1 from anybody who's played 2 and 3, because from 2 and 3 they kind of kept the look of you've got the commandos, you've got the if you look at them carefully you start to see, that's supposed to be a heavy. But they're a lot smaller than what they are in the second and third game. But there was these guys who looked like they were wearing vests and goggles, and they were fairly easy. But I know the ones you're talking about, because I found that I couldn't be bothered pumping round after round into those guys. I found that when you're using the Helghast rifle, because it's got the undercarriage shotgun as your secondary fire, I just literally run up to them and blast them point blank, and that seemed to work. So it was just a case of once you found their weakness,
exploiting it.
Yeah, you just spend the rest of the game doing that, and it became. Unless, of course, I was playing as Rico, in which case I just fire a rocket at them. But it was
from a distance. Right. Come back with a few more. We'll come back with a few more thoughts in a few seconds. I am busting for a pee. You take a break.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. There's not really much else to say, I don't think, on this game. Have you two got any final thoughts that you'd like to add?
Joe?
No, Jay, you're the guest. You go ahead.
Well, in a way, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, because I know that subsequent games I've enjoyed them for starters, and I know they have their sort of loyal communities. But it kind of amazes me that somebody at Sony had made the decision to make a sequel, because based on everything that you see in this game, you really, you kind of struggle to see what the hell. Why would you want to carry on with a series that this sort of slack in many ways? But I don't know. I'm glad they did. That's not meant as a sort of as a criticism towards the later games, because I've thoroughly enjoyed the games that have come since, and in part maybe this is just because it's like 6 years ago, and it's a game that, like so many games out there, there's plenty of games that do not age well, and you try going back, you have fond memories at the time, but if you try and go back to play them, they're flaws. And you, as a gamer who has evolved past, through another generation or two, you really struggle to sort of appreciate it again in the same sense. And it's very much like this with this. I don't remember having this much kind of negativity towards it the first time I played it. I thought, if I remember rightly, it was more a case of, that's all right, but ain't nothing to write home about. I'm going to go back and play Halo 2 now. You know what I mean? It's just, it's just.
Having said what you've just said, because obviously we've been playing Killzone 2 and Killzone 3 at a late date on multiplayer all together. Is Killzone 1 a game that you would recommend to anybody for the experience, not really for the gameplay?
No. I'd have to be honest about that. I'd say no. It's unless you're an absolute sort of masochistic completionist. There is really no reason to play this game. Just read the wiki page, you know what I mean? Or read Killzone2.com's website stuff, because it fills in all the blanks there anyway. And there's really no need to go and put yourself through the arduous experience of having to play Killzone again. Not, unless you haven't played any other game in the last 6 years, especially an FPS. In which case you won't be tainted with modern sort of standards. But, no, I couldn't recommend it, seriously.
Jake, you sent this to me. You gave it to me when I went over to London, and we commented on doing it for our show. I was going to say, I need an apology, a written apology.
Did you keep the receipt?
No. Would you do the same now? Would you also give this game to somebody? If I were to send it back to you, which I probably will. No, I'm kidding. Would you hand it to somebody else and say, just to see what gaming was like in the PS2 era, a game that maybe perhaps is not great on gameplay, it's got a lot of flaws, but just for the sheer experience of playing a game like this that was out in 2004 alongside other bigger titles, here you go. Try this. Experience it. For the better or for the worse, it doesn't matter. Just experience it.
No, to be quite honest. If I was going to give someone a game to sort of experience PS2 gameplay, it definitely wouldn't be Killzone. I mean, there are, as I said before, I did enjoy it to a certain extent, but I could only enjoy it for a certain amount of time before it got really, really dull. And the time that I did enjoy it wasn't long enough to warrant me recommending it to anyone else, I don't think. No, there's not much more I can add to that, I don't think. Just, there's so many other games that would better represent PS2 gameplay and the PS2 era than Killzone. So Killzone definitely wouldn't be a game I'd recommend. Not on that score, anyway.
Does Killzone fill a need, then? Does it... I don't know, Killzone 2, Killzone 3. Do you feel that there are too many shooters? Is there really a need for a Killzone 4? Is it something that maybe perhaps could be best done without?
I mean, that's like asking, is there a need for another Call of Duty? Is there a need for another Battlefield? I mean, they all have their... I mean, in terms of financial, in terms of profit, it may be questionable. I don't know how well Killzone 3 sold. I know there is still a lot of people playing it. And I'm not. I don't want to sound overly, like I'm criticizing, Sony or Guerrilla Games. They've come along in leaps and bounds since the debacle that is Killzone 1. But you can ask that question about any sequel. Is there really a need for it, or would you not be better to create a new IP? It's like we were saying right at the start. There's tons of potential within the world and the fiction they've created to make a great game. I mean, you can see things like that where they've tried and failed with the likes of Halo, where they made their Halo RTS, Halo Wars. And there's part of me that thinks Killzone would make... There's a good RTS game in there somewhere, In terms of, like, where are they going to go with Killzone in general, it's like, that's anybody's guess,
I just feel that sometimes it's, you experience these games on multiplayer, as we said many times, but you just sometimes think that the next one's going to be that much better. But I feel that they've as we said, they've missed certain tricks with characters and with parts of the story that maybe perhaps could have been exploited differently or done differently, and maybe been given a second opportunity or brought back at a later stage to maybe expand the story and give us a bit more insight into this hate, this battle, this war going on, literally, that you become a part of in a shooter. And I think maybe, as you say, there may be different elements that can be added to the next Killzone that would probably make it more attractive once again. I mean, from Killzone 1 to Killzone 2, we've seen, they've learnt from the mistakes effectively, and they've given us a great, Killzone 2 and later on a Killzone 3. It's probably got its flaws as well, but I don't see why those things can't be improved and made much, much more attractive to the game, making it really, in years to come, possibly an epic. I don't know.
I mean, we live in hope with that stuff, but all too often, and it's not just like this particular game. I mean, quite often our vision of the potential that games have is often never met anyway. You often come up against, get disappointed to a certain degree of the lack of ambition in some of these titles. But that said, what shooters have become now is about their multiplayer. The most successful shooters have a solid multiplayer, and that's really the only reason people tend to play them for as long as they do. The campaigns are often sort of rinsed and cast aside and forgotten about, and it's the multiplayer component that matters. So part of me is thinking that if they can't get the story down tight and really, give us something worth playing, then don't bother at all. This doesn't just mean, this isn't just my perspective on Guerrilla. This is like for any shooter, unless you're going to go all out on a campaign, don't bother. Spend the money and make a cracking multiplayer, because that's what we're going to be playing for hundreds of hours. It's not a single player.
It'll still have its fan base, of course, and people will still be on it. And
you know, these games, the longevity of a shooter relies on multiplayer, doesn't necessarily. I mean, there are exceptions. Half-Life is one as an example. Is Half-Life is all a single-player campaign, but I guess the multiplayers have spun off from the Half-Life kind of universal or engine, basically. But you know, it's but like I said, unless you're going to make it like a groundbreaking, definitive experience, part of me is quite often thinking, don't bother, you know? Just put all that effort, all that sort of stuff into the multiplayer. And maybe that's where Killzone's strength will lie in the future. It's where it lies now, is multiplayer. It's not a single-player experience. Single-player experience is done and dusted in a few hours and forgotten about.
Yeah. Well, I can only agree, because I think my experience with Killzone was not a great one. I felt that I just wanted to rush through it and get through it as quickly as possible and enjoy the credits. Because I didn't really enjoy the aiming and there was certain repetitiveness, as we've commented earlier. But I think it's just, I live in the hope that maybe those little things that they've missed will be brought back somehow, somewhere. And as you say, it's faith that maybe perhaps, you know, it might never happen. But I certainly hope that, you know, Killzone can be improved that way. And if there is ever a Killzone 4, that these things are looked up as errors, or possibly things that have been missed, and improved to make a much more epic series, let's say. Because I think the multiplayer is obviously its strong point, but you know. I feel that I could do with some story base, or something that's, I don't know, a bit more consistent, a bit more heavier. But anyway, we've yet to see what the future will bring. Okay, any last comments to add, or anything else that you feel needs saying?
I mean, just last thing on this is there is actually a multiplayer component on Killzone as well, which I don't suppose anybody even attempted to.
No, I think I had enough with the other one.
Well, I remember at the time trying it, but it was back in the day where you had the PlayStation Passport thing or whatever. It was an absolute pain in the arse to get online with, and it was an utter nightmare. And the only game I even had any kind of remote success with getting online was with Metal Gear 3, Snake Eater. That's the only game I managed to get online with, and that was crap and all. But the Killzone, I mean, when you go into the main option, you've got campaign and battlegrounds. If you just click on the battlegrounds and let it run, it goes into a multiplayer video. And my God, I mean, if we've had enough criticism over like this, it's a good job we didn't try the multiplayer, because it is just, you're just sitting there thinking, did anybody actually like this? Because it is crap. I mean, just watching it is the most sort of, it's almost like visual anesthetic watching the bloody thing. It's just, oh my God, what the hell? But, you know, whatever. But it's, apparently it's still running. The people were saying, I think it was with what the Frugal Boys were saying, that there's still some sort of homebrew server setups for the PlayStation game online, for the original PlayStation 2 games. And that some of them, like Midnight Run and Killzone, are still up and about. So you can actually get online. And I've got the modem on my PlayStation 2, and I was tempted. But then after playing one, I thought, nah, screw that. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it, you know?
Let's have a little break, and we'll come back with, shout-outs and stuff.
Welcome back, everybody. We've just got a couple of correspondence here that I'll read out. We've got a comment sent in by email and a Twitter question as well. The first comment is from Chris O'Regan from the Super Happy Fun Time show, and he says, "Greetings, gents. There are some odd facets to the original Killzone game that do need to be highlighted. Firstly, there is the 3 characters the player can be during the game. I think it means 4.
Mm-hmm.
They had minimal effects on the gameplay, with characters being able to crawl in small spaces while others had heavier firepower. This aspect of the game appeared to have been pared down from its original vision and subsequently dropped in the later games. Also, you couldn't jump. Yes, you could run and hide behind cover, but not stick to it. You had to vault over cover when the game allowed you to. The aiming is extremely sloppy to the point where it hinders the player. There are settings to improve it, but not by much. Other than that, the gameplay bears a remarkable resemblance to its sequels. This says a lot for a game that appeared in 2004, which was at the height of the PS2's dominance and development cycle. I do have fond memories of the game, but it wasn't the Halo killer the media at the time held it up to be until its arrival.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered most of those points as well, haven't we? So, he's spot on with what he's saying, because we've all been in agreement with everything, really. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I think it's all been said, and we've gone over it, and it's the we needn't repeat everything that. But yeah, I totally agree with what Chris has sent in. That it does have its flaws, and terrible at that as well. Any more comments, Jake?
Yeah, we do have a question, as I said, from Twitter as well. Mm-hmm. And this came in from Bad Bonobo, or Bad Bonobo, however you pronounce that. And he says, "Hey guys, a question. Do the graphical shortcomings ruin your immersion, or for you..." Sorry, it's... let me start that again. "Hey guys, a question. Do the graphical shortcomings ruin your immersion, or do you just need more imagination?" Joe?
No, not really. What, just for this particular game, you mean, or just in general?
Yeah.
For this one only. Well, I think you do need a bit of imagination. I don't think that we know the limitations that the PS2 has. We know that there's tearing and there's glitches and popping and stuff. So I think as long as the gameplay is good, I mean, you can have a game in HD and have some really, really fantastic graphics, but if the gameplay isn't good, I think it's not going to be a memorable game. I don't think it's one that you're going to enjoy, and you'll probably end up putting it down quite quickly. But I still think that it is important because as gamers now, and with all the technological advances that we have, I think we expect a game to look good in any case, and I think that it adds to the enjoyment of it. So even though you are sometimes imagining things, and in Killzone certainly it's not the graphics that's the strength or the gameplay. You do have to use your imagination, but for me, I think I'm a bit of I don't know, I like nice graphics. So for me, I would say yes, graphics are important. Not so much so in the PS2 era, and with games like this, because it's gone, it's there, and there's very little you can do. But certainly, if there's a remake, an HD remake, I'd certainly have a look at it.
I never find that graphics sort of hinder immersion for me. As you've said, Joe, it's more about gameplay, and that's what I found about this game. It was more the game itself killed the immersion for me by being so bloody repetitive. That I just, like I said, after probably 20 minutes max, I just got completely bored with it and wanted to put it down. I mean, I didn't put it down, I trudged through it. But I found that sort of a lack of variation in the missions and the gameplay, that was what killed the immersion for me. How about you, Jay? Did you find...
Well, I tend to find that any game of, say, even last generation, and if you go back even further to the PS1, I find that there's always a hurdle to get over on a visual level, because of what we've gotten. So it's hard to say whether we've been spoilt by the graphics these days, but, there's a huge, even if you go back 6 years, the graphical fidelity between games then to what they are now is vast. But I find that I've always got a hurdle to get over, no matter how, if it's last gen, it's just a question of how long it takes. Some games, like you said, the gameplay sucks you in again. And once that's happened, then you're fine. But with Killzone, it was a case that you had neither the graphics or anything to write home about. And I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, this would look crap on a PSP. It's like it's to me, it's that bad at times. There are moments where you do think, okay, this level looks particularly reasonable. It doesn't look that bad, but I found that, like you're saying about the gameplay, it wasn't there. So you just sort of sitting. It does become kind of tedious after a while.
To be honest, I think we've covered everything now. I think that's probably pretty much it, unless anyone's got any last comments to add.
Yeah, if they do a HD remake, man, I'm writing a letter of complaint.
Yeah,
save it
I
for
don't think I'd
something
check
else.
out a HD remake either.
Because I'm going to say, if somebody's willing to spend the money to do that, they really, really need to have their account taken off them, because it's a case of like, there are better things you could be spending money on and better games out there that we would like to see in HD rather than this.
I said I'd have a look. I didn't say I'd buy it. I'd certainly have a look, but it would look nice to see game. Well, I think it's yet to be proved with older games like when Shadow of the Colossus and when Ico come out.
Yeah, but you see that's
just to see
that's
how
the same thing. I mean, maybe less so about Ico, but Shadow of the Colossus there was some issues over the control mechanism of this, and see, I'm not convinced by HD remakes. I want to see. I want to see slight tweaks made to the control schemes and stuff to make the game play a little less cack-handed than it did at the time. And if that doesn't happen, then a visual sheen, which will be all it is if they leave the control scheme as it is. It's not good enough. I want to tweak the mistake. See just beyond the visual side of it and tweak the flaws that the original games had. I mean, with Killzone, it would require a complete from start to finish remake, it's the only way you, and rewrite, re-record the voices, re-record all the audio. It's just, really, it's just not, it wouldn't even be worth contemplating, would it? But if they do a remake of Killzone, the only way I want to see that is in comic book form, because I don't want to play it ever again. You know what I mean? It's just, do a sort of 20-page comic, because I'm sure they could fit everything that's of relevance in that fucking game into that a 20-page comic. Put it out there, job done.
Yeah, and improve it, of course, with a series of pictures. Yeah, certainly. Right. I think we've covered everything. I think if we go any more negative, it's going to have a negative tag to the podcast. I think people are going to be switching off because we've said everything that needs to be said. So, listeners and those of you who are thinking of picking up Killzone, don't. In other words, don't even bother. And if someone offers you a copy, just say thanks, but no thanks. Not into it. Well, shout-outs, I think, is the next stage. Right, Jakes, have you got any, by the way?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No,
none at all. Jake, any shout-outs to anybody?
You're on your own here, Joe. Go for it.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. You've got to help me out here. Well, I've got one. I've got one for a new listener, CookieMan1970. He's swell chap. He's been playing Dead Nation with me on the PS3, and he's picked up the copy of the show, and he said he's going to be listening to this as well. So hi to Cookie. Also, shout out for the Dork Tunes as well. Two lads, Matt Harrier and Evil Noob, who also have a show. And very well worth a listen. It's game music. If you haven't heard it already, certainly well worth a listen. And to Swell Chaps also.
Swell Chaps. Are you
Swell?
Coming from the 50s now?
Yeah, well, it's a polite way, a nice way of saying it. They're fantastic chaps. They're good lads. Where can people get in contact? Because now we are going to be doing a quick save next. So I think where can they get hold of us, Jake?
Well, you can email the show in. Excuse me. Got someone else's teeth in. You can email into the show at lastsaveloaded@gamerdork.net. And you can also get in touch with us via Twitter. We are at lastsaveloaded. And I am at Jake Del Toro.
I'm GBJoey71. We also have a Facebook page. We also have not only a Facebook page. There's Well, now we have a new Facebook page, don't we?
Yeah, we did have a Facebook group, but we've that's been ditched. We've got a page now, so if you just search Last Save Loaded on Facebook and give us a like on there, it'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, and if you like the show as well, we'd appreciate a nice little iTunes review from you as well, just to give us a little bit of push, please.
How about you, Jay? Are you still on Twitter?
I am, yeah. At J70, all one word.
Cool.
I think that's more or less it. I think check out the blog gamerdoc.net as usual, and I think that the rest is just. Well, we're there. Any comments, suggestions for games? We have had a couple. Somebody was talking about BioShock, Jake, this past week, about playing that. People want us to play it. I've had 2 comments. I don't know if you saw them.
Yeah, well, it falls into our category of over 2 years. And I've never actually played BioShock, so I'd be well up for that.
Oh, have you not? Yeah, well, I love the games. I'm very much in the Ratso Albion camp with BioShock. I absolutely adore them. They're brilliant games.
I've got a game for you if you're interested.
Go on then, Jay. Yeah,
13.
That's on. We've got that on the list actually, and I can't wait to play that.
Yeah, because that's one that people seem to have really forgotten about at the time.
It's very cartoony as well, or is it like comic strip with the old pow and the big speech bubbles?
There's one level that really sticks out
for
me, and it's a bit of a stealth level actually, and I think you're trying to break into a base it's a sort of a snow level, and you're using throwing knives. That level just sticks out for me for some reason. That's what I think of whenever I think of 13. But yeah, I'm definitely up for playing that again. Love that game.
Well, that said, thank you very, very much, Jay, for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Not a problem.
We'll like to have you again in the future. Welcome to come on.
Not a chance.
The last save loaded doors are always open for yourself and for Ratso, of course.
While we're on the subject of guests, I'll just say that on the next episode, I'm not going to say what game we're playing, but on the next episode, we've actually got Chris O'Regan coming on, and he's chosen a game that he'd like us to go through. Obviously, he's going to play it as well, but we'll announce that on the Quick Save episode. But yeah, we're going to be joined by Chris next episode, so that should be good. Looking forward to having him on as well. Yeah,
it should be fun. I'm sure he's got lots of comments about the game. He's the game that he suggested we pick up and play. So I've not played it, so I'm looking forward to chatting about it with Chris.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Should we get out of here then and go and play Killzone 3 or
Let's do it.
Okay. Thank you very much to everybody. We'll be back very soon. I have been GB Joey 71 Calvo.
I have been Jake Del Toro.
And I've been Jay Taylor.
Thank you. See you again soon.
See you next time.